Hey guys, I recently noticed there are a lot of new players, despite the fact that the Return to World campaign has already ended a small while ago, and I want to make a video to talk about the beginner mistakes that new players make. Since this game is so insanely punishing, some of these mistakes cause very preventable carts later on, or can stunt player growth overall. If you are struggling as a new player, then keep your eyes peeled, because you might be missing out on some very important strategies that I'll cover in this video. Starting from the very top, I think the first mistake can happen as early as the base game in the workshop. New players will inevitably come to this area hoping to get their first gear upgrade, as they prepare to take on monsters like the Anjanath, and notice that all the weapons and armors appear to have lackluster attack and defense values, all but one line: the Defender armor set. Since they don't know any better, they will pick up the armor and proceed to enjoy all the benefits of the Defender set. This is what I believe to be the first mistake that new players will make while picking up the game. But surely, Capcom wouldn't release the set if it was not meant to be used, which is completely true. This set was originally introduced for players to quickly finish the story as Capcom prepares its launch for Monster Hunter World Iceborne. You can see from the Capcom site itself that this set will boost you through the main story of Monster Hunter World. Players who use the set will quickly find themselves facing against powerful foes without having to put any time into farming up multiple armor sets and components. Unfortunately, that also takes away the time that new players should be spending to learn the ins and outs of their weapon and how the game plays. Capcom also tunes the Defender armor to be more in line with other armors later on in Iceborne, and the Defender set quickly falls off due to its lackluster armor skills, leaving players clueless on monsters to farm for gear and which armor skills are important for their build, while putting them into an awkward place in terms of damage and survivability. While Defender sets are great for taking an extra hit or two, players should be careful not to become accustomed to the relatively reduced damage taken that Defender sets offer, lest they be in for a rude awakening in Iceborne. Aside from gearing, another mistake I see a lot of newer hunters make is avoiding the optionals. Optional quests, despite its wording, is necessary for any player who is serious about putting time into the game. Completing optional quests will provide ingredients, upgrade botany, and unlock a secret rainbow die for players who have the time and sanity to complete every single one. Food ingredients are actually crucial for later game, as having access to all the canteen ingredients provides important food skills such as Feline Black Belt, which provides stamina cost reductions for bow and dual blade users, Feline Moxie, which can prevent one-shots, and Feline Safeguard, which grants one additional card. The botany is nothing to scoff at either, as it provides players with a large amount of rare crafting resources to collect from the harvest box at the end of each hunt. Doing optional quests can extend the harvest box, meaning players can do more hunts before having to collect, or unlock fertilizers, which can increase the yield of the resources of each hunt. These can then be crafted into important endgame healing items and buffs, making endgame grinds go by smoother and faster. The next mistake is less about gearing and quest priorities, but more so general gameplay. One issue I noticed, as well as formerly been a perpetrator of, is the overcommitting of clutch claw mechanics. For a good majority of the game, monsters tend to not directly punish a clutch claw attack, and punishes that do end up hitting the player become mitigated through the use of a rocksteady or temporal mantle. Players only need to tenderize once every 3 minutes, since Capcom has buffed the tenderize timings. Since the tenderizing attack is extremely weak, players should try not to tenderize again until the debuff is about to wear off. Even if the tenderize has already worn off, players should not be in a rush to re-tenderize if the window does not permit. In fights such as Fatalis, throwing out a clutch claw before Fatalis' animation locked will cause it to drop into all fours, hitting players to the ground, unless they have a temporal mantle, before deleting them from the stage with a fireball or something. This is even worse on Arch-Tempered Valkana and Elatrion, where a poorly timed clutch claw will result in an instantly destroyed temporal mantle, or a straight up death with a cart steady mantle. Funny thing is, when I asked my friends, they said the exact opposite, that new players tend to not tenderize at all. If players are running weakness exploit, that means they can be losing up to 20% of their affinity from not tenderizing. So I guess the best way to think about it is, if you see an opportunity, go for it, but don't become tunnel visioned. Next, an issue I noticed and I want to address is regarding defenses and healing. Now, as a new player, I wouldn't expect perfect gameplay, so saying things like defense and healing is useless would just be completely out of pocket. Instead, the main issue I noticed was new players not upgrading their armors to the highest level. Sometimes, even when using slightly weaker gear, having a high upgrade level on the item can compensate for the reduced defenses compared to what higher rarity gears can provide. These levels can serve as a stopgap measure until the next gear piece can be forged, so that players can tackle harder monsters without having to constantly swap out older gear pieces for new ones that have less desirable armor skills. Eventually, players are going to be hit, so I think it's good to talk about healing as well. One thing I noticed about new players, especially players that recently hit endgame and are starting grinds, is that they tend to over-rely on items such as mega potions to sustain their healing. I would encourage these players to look into alternative healing options, such as sushi fish, for those who don't mind spending some of their time fishing, or max potions and ancient potions. For starters, players are able to farm the ingredients for max potions via botany, or use some of their research points and Steam tickets into crafting max potions via the Elder Melter. Additionally, players can craft bitter bugs, honey, and mandragoras in their botany in order to craft immunizers, and then farming some Kelby horns can get players up to 30 full HP and stamina heals in their inventory via ancient potions. I'm not much of a healer main, but I think that probably beats out spending half a minute to chuck a mega potion to heal for less health. Now, since I am Asian and we have a horrible tendency to avoid the number 4, I'm going to throw out one bonus mistake that I noticed for new players. That not being using the wishlist function. Running over to the smithy can be boring, especially when you have to do it every single hunt to check if you have finally received the monster part needed to craft the armor you've been hoping for, only to realize that you were off by a single piece. And then you have to go back and queue up the quest all over again. The wishlist function prevents you from making these unnecessary trips back and forth, saving you a lot of headache in the long term. It's very surprising, considering Monster Hunter does not highlight the wishlist function, meaning that players will often be left in the dark about it until they decide to look down and see what all the menu buttons do. Now that I have averted the crisis of releasing a video with only 4 mistakes, I hope that new players that stumble by this video will save themselves a bit of headache and suffering. If you have any tips that you have for new players, feel free to drop them into the comments section below, or leave a like if this video helped you out. If you want to get some advice from some amazing players, I encourage you to check out my streams every Monday, Thursday, and Saturdays starting at 8 PM PST, talk with speedrunners and weapon specialists about ways to improve your weapon, or just watch me fall over to every mechanic imaginable. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.